start by disconnecting the battery. Grab this cover. There is some clips right here. Push on those clips, 2 on this side, 2 on the other side. And slide this cover up. You don't have to disconnect the computer. Slide it out of the way. You can access the negative terminal. Use a 10mm wrench. Loosen this up. And slide the terminal out of the way. Now we're going to pull this cover off. You can take this oil cap off. Set that aside. And there is a T30. Use a T30 driver or socket. Remove this bolt, just like that. And grab the cover and just slide it up. It is secured by these grommets right there. And we can remove this bolt, use a 10mm socket. And it is caged, it's just gonna stay with the intake. Now we're gonna loosen up this worm clamp and also the one on the throttle body. You can use a straight blade screwdriver or an 8mm socket. Now we can take this hose off right here. Just slide it down. Now just grab this and just slide it up. Push back on the snorkel and just slide it out. Disconnect the mass airflow sensor connector. There is a little lock. Slide that lock back and then disconnect the connector just by pushing on the button. Use a trim tool and just pry the harness off of the airbox. Now I'm going to remove the top part of the airbox. Just slide the clips up. There's a clip on the back as well. Slide that out. Take the air filter out. There's some rubber grommets holding the airbox down. Just grab the airbox and just pull it up gently. You can slide this intake out of the way. And just slide it out of the way. So it's not in the way, I'll just remove this piece. Next we're going to replace these 2 solenoid valves. They're on the backside head or bank 1 head. If you're replacing those, that's as much as you need to take apart. We are going to take this mount off and this other bracket to get to the other ones because they're in the way. But if you were just replacing these, that's as far as you had to go. Now just disconnect the connector. It's just a little tab. You might want to use a straight blade screwdriver or even using a pair of needle nose pliers just to compress the, just to push on the button and slide the connector up. Just like that. You just push down on that. There's a 10mm bolt. Just use a 10mm socket. Take that bolt out. Take that out and grab the solenoid. And it helps to twist the solenoid just to break it free from the seal. And just slide it out, straight out towards the outside of the vehicle. And there it is. Before I install the new solenoid valve, I'm just going to take some motor oil and just coat the valve. Just make installing it a little bit easier. Now take the valve and carefully slide it into position. And if the seal looked like it wasn't doing so well, you might want to replace the seal, but most of the time you can reuse the seal. Line that up, put the bolt in, and snug it down. Yeah, take the connector and plug it in, lock it in place. Then to replace the other one, we're going to do the same thing. Disconnect the connector, take the bolt out, slide it out. I need to remove this mount. Before I remove the mount, I need to support the engine underneath, about right in this area. There is a mount over here and a mount on this side, so it's not going to take the whole weight of the engine, so just support underneath. And I'll just use a block of wood and just go towards the front of the oil pan, right on the corner. Just be careful. That's good. Now I'll use a 15mm socket. Take this nut out and those two bolts. To prevent having to deal with the coolant system and having to drain the radiator and then refill it, I'm not going to disconnect this hose. If you wanted to, you could do that, or you can use a wrench and just access these two bolts from under here. Use a 15mm wrench. Now with those two loose, now I can take this one off. Same 15mm socket. Just grab the mount and slide it out of the way. Raise up the front of the engine if you have to, and just slide it out. There's 3 bolts holding this bracket down. Use an 18mm socket. Take this one out first, in the middle. And there's one back here. To access this bolt, there is a AC bracket holding on the pipe. We're just going to take that off. Use a 10mm socket. Take the nut off right here. And there's a bracket right here. Just slide a trim tool under there, and then a bracket right here. If you loosen those up, we can move these lines a little easier. Just be careful not to break the lines. And definitely don't take that nut off there. You don't want to disconnect that. What you need to do now is use a thinner socket. If you have a serpentine belt tool, you could use that and find the 18mm socket. This is thinner than a standard socket. We can slide it in between there and loosen that bolt up. This bolt is completely loose, and take this bolt out over here. And just slide this bracket out of the way. And try to slide this bolt out right here, and just grab it. And just slide it. Now we can access these other 2 solenoids, and you take these out the same way you take the other ones out. Just push down on the connector, disconnect the connector, and then there's a 10mm bolt. Take the bolt out, slide it out, lubricate it, put the new one in, and put it back together. For the bottom one right here, the bolt is actually underneath the serpentine belt. So you could take the serpentine belt off if you want, or just move the belt out of your way a little bit and take the bolt out. And just pull that bolt out. You don't have to take the belt off though. And twist the valve and slide it up. And slide that one in position. If you get any oil on the belt, make sure you wipe it off. And I'll put the bolt back in. Just raise the belt up. And get it started. And make sure you connect the connectors. Now we can take this bracket, slide it in position. And put the bolts in. And you can torque these bolts to 74 foot-pounds. And do the best you can with this front one. You probably can't fit the torque wrench in there. And now you can move this AC line, get that bracket back in position. And put the nut on. And snug it up. Now take the engine mount and slide it in position. Be careful around this hose with the plastic. You don't want to crack anything. Get all these bolts started before you tighten anything down. Tighten these all down. Make sure that the mount itself is not crooked. Make sure it's lined up so all the bolts get tightened down fairly evenly. And you can torque these bolts to 47 foot-pounds. Do the best you can with those other two. And you can torque these two bolts down to 47 foot-pounds. And you can torque this nut down to 38 foot-pounds. Now you can lower the engine with your floor jack or whatever you are supporting the engine with. Now install the lower part of the airbox. And if this piece came off, install that piece. And press it down. There we go. Install the air filter. And the upper air box slides in on the back and then clamps down. Now install the snorkel. Slide it over the throttle body and onto the airbox. Line up the rubber grommet on the back and push it down. Get this bolt started. Tighten down the bolt. Reinstall this air hose that goes to the top of the valve cover. Tighten down the worm clamps. And just snug them up. Connect the connector for the mass airflow sensor and the retainer. Put this cover back on. Take the oil cap off. Cover on, lock it down, put the oil cap back on, and put the bolt back in, and snug it down. Now we can reconnect the battery, slide the cover out of the way, reconnect the negative terminal, and tighten it down. And give it a shake. Looks good. Reposition the cover. And lock it down. It's recommended that after you're doing this job, you do an oil change on the vehicle. A common failure for these valves is lack of oil changes.